Hi all, I'm Vijay Jethani. So today's session is mainly on the deployment strategy. Okay, so if you remember from our last session, I think we were covering the module 3, which had the implementation of pipelines and then deployments. And we have a bit of infrastructure as code as well because we are deploying using the ARM as well as biceps. Okay. So these are the templates, I think. And finally, we have to maintain the pipeline. And once we are done with that, I think we will also cover the package management strategy as well as the monitoring. So in last session, we started with our basics of designing and implementing pipeline. Okay, so we did 6 labs, which covered right from self-hosted pipelines. Then we slowly move on to the CI. Then we did the CD, and then we also tried with the Docker. So the variants, one was on web app, other was on Docker, and finally we ended up with the doing the same things with GitHub Actions. So that was a brief about our last session. Now in continuation to what we implemented pipeline, now we want to move to how to design a release strategy. So if you see the release strategy, it starts with the design blue, exposure, feature flags, and A/B testing. Similarly, what kind of the dependency deployments, similarly the load balancing, slot swap. So these are the feature sets of basically the whatever you do with the application. Okay, hot fixes, resiliency, and obviously some of them we will cover during monitoring. App configuration, feature manager we will cover in monitoring, but most of this of the deployments at least we can cover in the release strategy. Okay, so to set the agenda right for this session, okay, so we are going to cover two modules from this, topics from this module 3 session. One is on design and implement deployments, and another is on the testing strategy. Okay, so having said that, our agenda for this particular session will be these particular two labs. Okay. Now, when I say these two particular labs, even though they look only two labs compared to the 6 labs we did in the last session, but these are very, uh, according to the implementation which we are do, they will take pretty much time in implementing them. Okay. So before I jump into the release strategy, as we have already seen from an exam construct, there are different release strategy like blue, green, and then you have a canary and you have a continuous deployment. Three things you have to remember on top of your mind. Okay, so continuous deployment is where if I push anything, that should be directly published, or the depending upon the build, I should be able to release my new version on the production environment. That is continuous deployment. Now blue green, it takes a different approach to this. While you do the green, I think you are pretty much aware that you are setting up the parallel environment. So that is your green. While you blue is in place upgrade. So when you say something like I'm moving from version 1 to version 2, that is basically your blue implementation. That means you are upgrading an existing thing which we call blue. And then canary. Now canary takes a very different approach than all. While they target the production, but they are only for subset of users. While blue green and continuous deployment, they are fully targeted to the complete production environments, and they affect every user. Okay, so if you are to talk about compare canary versus a continuous deployment and blue green, canary is only targeted for the few users. We also involve them in mainly during the testing phase, because even though we say this is like we do to the subset of user, we can't directly roll out immediately to the more users because of the constraints we have during the deployments or the approvals during the deployments. Okay, so in production, if you really want to make sure that you are doing the right thing, either you should have a parallel environment like blue green, or the separate way to look at is, if you are going with a continuous deployment, then your approach should be like everything is uh, fail everything is able to recover back, if there's any failure without any downtime. Okay, so if you remember these two things, like from blue, green, and continuous deployment, I think your release strategy will be very clear. Now, as we did the labs from our Microsoft Az400 hosted lab, similarly we will do today as well. There are few things which we will cover, like I will show you the come to the module 3. Okay, so there is a design and implement release strategy. Now this was the first lab. I think we pretty much cover this in our first session on this module, that means session 3, which I'm talking about. Now if you see this, I think is pretty much talking about the getting the YAML file in and getting the build done. Okay, so you have the build here and then deploying that particular. So if you see the complete pipeline of this, I'm just in interest of time, I'm just bringing you to the pipeline complete. So you have two stages here. One is build, which you actually created the package, or I would say ready with the artifacts to be deployed. And then finally in deploy stage, you do the deployment. We did in the CD part exactly the same thing. And that is what is being shown here. So that is the reason we will be skipping this particular lab from the release strategy and moving ahead directly with the control deployments or release strategy. Okay, so let me open that particular lab and then slowly we'll move on with that. Okay, now here if you see from, I think you can read out this, but I think I will explain you in short what we are trying to do here is from this lab we are going to create a release pipeline. Okay, and you are going to have the release gates. Release gates means the deployment from once the build is ready, I should be able to approve and move it to the deployment in even the dev test environment. Similarly, I should have approval to deploy in the production is what the final stage will do. So if you see in this, I think we will create a project the way we have, or if you already have the project, you will reuse that. You import a repository because this is a basic construct we do in every lab. Okay, because repository is required, and then we create a release pipeline. Now the way it is different from our previous labs is we did everything purely on YAML. Okay, but here as a part of our release strategy, I will show you how we are creating using UI. Okay, step by step guide how we are creating with UI. Even though it is pretty much easy, I think, but you should know what are the moving parts and how to enable the right component. Like say if something is being built from your CI, that should go to your release pipeline, how you will consume that in your Azure DevOps. So that is what we will see in this particular lab. Okay, so while we are seeing this, going through this lab, I will shortly jump to the actual doing this on the Azure DevOps. But in short, I'm explaining what exactly we are trying to do. So CI remains same the way we did. The changes which you see in the release. Okay, in release, I think now here we are actually going to do the deployments using UI. Okay, before doing the deployments, I think here, if you see in this particular task, it is asking you to create a resource group, and then it will create an app service plan. Then finally create a two app services. One is for dev test, another is for production. Okay, so that is what they are doing in this particular. And once they are done with that, they are also enabling the application insight, because what we are doing in this particular lab is we are testing whether there is any alert before we can move ahead with the deployments to the production. Okay, so if there is any alert, we will not move and the gate remains open, so that the deployment is not done until that particular alert or error is being fixed. Okay, so we are deploying the application inside Azure Monitor is monitoring those alerts, and we will see how we are doing that. But to just give you an overview, we are having the deployment using a command line. Then we are doing the deployment of an application insight on the website and the app service. And finally, if you see, we are creating an alert threshold of to track that failed alert and then moving ahead with the deployments. Okay, now this is the part where you will see the UI. Now here This is a completely new pipeline created with the help of releases. We will see it, but I think just to explain you now here each and every part of how this is working, better to explain you in the UI, because this I think you will not get step by step. So better we do it step by step and then see how these gates are being controlled. Finally, how the alarm is being fired and how we are finally able to deploy to the dev test, and then getting the gates in place, and finally once the gates are there, gates are being ready, we deploy the production. Okay, so this is pretty much what we will do in our release strategy for today's particular lab. Okay, this is pretty much, hence please pay attention for each and every step so that you don't miss anything. Okay, so let's move to the doing the hands-on. Okay, so let's move to the hands-on and move to the pipeline. Within pipeline, let's move to the release. Okay, so I already have one of the pipeline which we will run. Okay, the look and feel, I will just show you how this looks like. So you have an artifacts which can come from your repositories, or they can come from any pipeline, or there are different ways. I will show you what are other things. You can bring from build, you can bring from repo, you can bring from GitHub, you can bring from even the other, the TFCs. And if you see, you can also have an artifacts. That means something is already being deployed, you are just consuming that package. GitHub has the release. Okay, that means some package is already ready. Similar is for Azure Container, Docker Hub, and Jenkins. Even we have the integration with Jenkins. So these are the ways you can bring the artifacts in at this stage. Okay, and then these stages what you see are actually the released stages. Okay, now first one is of dev test. That means at first place I want to make sure that if anything is getting deployed to the stage, for me to enable the containers, this is the trigger. So at this point of time, the anything committed on repository, this is off. Then similarly, if anything is being deployed from the pipeline, that means CI pipeline, that is off. Okay, there are two things. One is the build being triggered, another is pull request being triggering the actual deployment. So we will make it on. So bear with me for some time. So this is the artifact stage which you can plug in. And second thing is here pre-deployment conditions. Now in pre-deployment conditions, we want an approval before we can move ahead, so that we are not doing anything and every without any approvals, and we are aware that yes, we are supposed, once this is ready in the production, we are ready to go ahead from the approvals, or I would say the deployment is complete and everything is done and everything tested, and we are ready for the deployment. Okay, so this is where the dev test will pitch in from the CI to the actual release of the dev test environment. Okay, so we will come to the task, but I think at least understand the stages. The other stage is the production. Now this we can only go through the gates. So here is our gates. So if you see, we have the post deployment. Either you can have approvals in place, but here we are having the gates in place. Now gates is monitoring the Azure monitor alerts. How we will do that, I think we will see in a short time. But at this point of time, just understand the flow. You have the gates in place. Once this gate is closed, then only I will be able to do the deployment at the production. And once I do the again, I need an approval from the production team saying that yes, we have the right resources in place, things are being checked, everything is in check. I should be able to now deploy without anything. Okay, so this is where again approval is in place. You can remove that, but I think approval is the best place unless and until you really want everything to be automated, which in today's environment, I think today's world, no one does that. The release strategy, which is a continuous deployment, you always have some approvals in place. Even though you do the continuous deployment, approvals has to be there in place. Otherwise this will be a big problem once you deploy everything to production without knowing what exactly you deployed. Okay, so at this point of time, this is what we are going to create. Now let's create the new pipeline. Okay, so I'm just moving to the, so I'm just starting with new release pipeline. This is pretty much new at this point of time. I will close this off. Okay. I will give a name to this. Say the name which I'm giving is Az400 hands-on lab release pipeline. Okay. So give a name to the release pipeline at first place. Once you're done, we have to add the artifacts. Now, as you know, we are going to consume the CI artifacts. So I'm just pulling out the CI pipeline here. Okay. So if you see these are the different pipelines we created in our last. So I'm just pulling out CI eShop on web and just giving the latest version and just adding it. Okay. So this was the one from the pipeline per se. Okay. So I'm consuming the output. But if I want to deploy something from a repository, I can pull that as well and select the project. Okay. And then within that, I have the eShop on web repository and at the branch main version, let it take from whatever it wants and it will have some source alias. Okay, so as of now I should be sorted with the attaching to the repository, because if I want to pull something like our bicep templates or arm templates, I can pull it directly. Okay, so I have now artifacts ready to be deployed. Okay, so at this point of time we are just consuming the things from a release. Okay, now at this stage I'm creating the staging environment. Okay, now for this what I will do here is I will try to see the deployment. Now that is an arm deployment, so I will just select the right template. Just a minute. I will start with empty job. Okay, empty job, give it a name. I am doing this for dev test. Okay, once you do that, I think you will be able to see the changes to the dev test. And now I will actually, now I have a by default agent. Okay, now within agent, I want to make sure I want to, first of all, you can also check out whether you want Ubuntu or the, this purely depends upon depending on the agent pools you want to have. If you want to have self-hosted, you can do that as well, provided you have the pool for that. Okay, so I will leave this as a default, or maybe you can move to the Azure pipelines and select the agent specifications of Ubuntu latest, or I would say the Windows latest. Okay, so I leave this with you. I normally go with the Ubuntu latest in most of the situations, but I think I leave this with you wherever you want to use, because this is purely irrelevant. Okay, like both the machines will give me the same result, so it will not be a problem for us. Okay, now adding the jobs. First is ARM. Okay, I want to have the ARM template deployment. This is the first step. Now, if you have seen clearly while I was explaining you this release here, control using release gates, I think they have done the deployment using CLI. But to save our time from this, what I'm doing is I'm directly consuming the, I don't want to do this. I'm directly consuming the ARM templates. That is the reason I'm using the ARM template deployment as my first step. Okay, so you can do as per the lab, or you can have ARM deployment as well. I think I'll leave that option with you. Okay, so first is ARM. Another thing, once I'm ready with the ARM, I want to have the app service deploy. Okay, so I again have the app service deploy. Okay, now one thing you have to note here is while you are doing this, you have to make sure you are giving a right service connection which should be available. I think we created this last time, so I'm reusing that. If you are doing completely new, I think you have to create a service connection. Service connection is nothing but you are connecting to Azure and then moving ahead with the actual deployments. Okay, so now resource group. Here I will put it directly. Say today we are doing AZ400 HOL and dev test is the resource group which we want to give, and location you can pull from the drop down. Okay, so I think I will select here East US2. And where is my template for this deployment? If you remember, I think while we were doing CD, I clearly show you in our repository, there is an infra folder. Within infra folder, there is webapp.bicep. So we will exactly select that. Okay, now this is something which we will do, but for this we also have to override the name of the web app which we'll be creating. Okay, so for that I think what we can do here is we can directly go here and add a, we basically need two variables. One is web app for dev. Okay, and give it a value, give it a value. Okay, like say here I want az400 dev test. Okay, similarly for the production I would say web app prod, and I want the name of that website to be az400 prod in short. Okay, so this is what the you will set up the variable. Okay, so here it will show you the whatever the variables you are setting. Okay, and you give the deployment name. If you are doing it for dev test, you do it for dev test. By here I think we are doing for both. I think you can give deployment as a dev test prod as well, dev test and prod both. I think this doesn't matter. I think I'm just showing you what you can pull in. Once you are done, I think you can save them. Okay, uh, and then come back here. Okay, so this is saved automatically. Okay, for your first task. Now now this task will also consume the your variables. Okay, so what I will do here is I will pull out the exactly same thing. Now depending upon web app on windows or this, I think you can again you can select based on what you want, but here the deployment is the package itself, so should not matter whether you are deploying on windows or linux. And similarly app service name, now this is where you will put the dollar, the web app of dev test and web app of for production. Okay, so make sure while you select which deployment you want to reuse, you do the so accordingly it will pull out the deployment. Okay, so here first stage, this is the first stage, you are selecting app dev test. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to do the deployment from C app and I want to give the website the web.zip. Okay, so I will also select the which package I want to deploy here. Okay, now remember this whatever I have put here, it should match here. If there's something fancy here, I think we should be able to see here. 1 minute, I'm just trying to check out why it has not come here. Okay, okay, let me create it again. So what we did was web app dev test. Okay, so value I wanted was az400 dev test. Similarly I wanted to have web app prod, and the value I wanted to have az400 prod. Oh, I think I have not saved it while I did this. So this is important. I think you have to save this again, otherwise this will be lost. Okay, now I think I should be having this out of box. Okay, so this variable should be there now. Yeah, they are there. Coming back to the deployments. So just make sure whatever you put here as a app service name, you have already mentioned something here. So web app dev test and value, define the variables here. Just put the dollar sign and the brackets web app dev test so that it picks up the actual name which you have set as a part of variable. Okay, once you are here, I think till here pretty much you have done with the stage one. Okay, and you are actually here. Okay, as of now you are done with the stage one. Now I will show you, come back to the pipeline which we created. Okay, so you are here. Okay, now from this I want to make sure I consume the pipeline, so I will enable this trigger. First thing, continuous deployment trigger, and then at here I would say I need an pre-deployment approval and put my name here. Okay, so I am admin. Okay, so I have had a pre-deployment approval as well for me. Okay, now I have enabled the deployment. Okay, now triggers here as of now I'm just saying go for the approval itself. Okay, that's it as of now. Okay, then followed by this I will create the actual gates. Now gates it where I want to make sure when I say adding the gate, I'm trying to add either some policy compliance or some kind of function, some API to be invoked, or in short, I think here as a part of lab, we are doing the Azure monitor and we are picking it from a subscription. Okay. And while you deploy, make sure you also are pulling the resource group from where the Azure monitor is configured. Okay, so we will let me do this. Say suppose here I'm doing for Az400 dev test. Just put that Azure wherever you are trying to have the your applications deployed. Now here we are doing the deployment. Okay, so just make sure you have this done. Okay, so now our condition is ready. Okay, now while you are here, you can click here and I think cloning the, just a minute. Yeah, here it is, clone. So you are cloning this particular stage. Make sure you remove this at first place because otherwise gates will also come after production, which we don't want. Then second thing which we want here is do it for the make it production stage. Okay, and I want same things, that means I want the deployment, but make sure I change this to HOL prod. Similarly, the variables which I'm bringing, I think I can't have two or both of them. I think I have to delete one of them. Better I just a minute, better I delete here with the I delete this one, sorry, delete dev test here. And okay, similarly, while I come here, I pull up only prod. Now this I'm not doing any randomly. You have to go to the variables and pull out what exactly web app prod. Same thing you want it here, web app prod. Okay. So this is not something random which we are doing. Okay. So this is what the variables which we are passing on for prod. Similarly, one thing I think in previous stage, first let me save this. So one thing I want from the previous stage is while I go to the pipeline, let me click on HOL. Just a minute. Release HOL edit. Okay, so one thing I did deliberately is I here while I was overriding, I had given the variable names both, which is not required because here you are only deploying the, so you can remove this. Okay, and click save. Okay, so here web app dev test. Web app dev is what our variable is. So I would say test and then give it a Azure 400 dev test. Okay, so this is our first stage. We did the first thing we did the uh, trigger, which is continuous deployment from the pipeline of CI. Then we came here for giving the approvals in place. Then we did the control gates, which is nothing but the Azure monitor. So which I will show you how these alerts will be generated. And finally coming here, we want this to be again approved before I deploy to the production. So this is the flow which we created exactly to what the pipeline we already have. Okay, so this is what you have want to do as part of your lab. I know this is pretty much to do, but I think if you do slowly in steps, I think you should be able to do it successfully. Just ensure you understand each and every concept which we talked about. First, is where you consume, which is from an artifacts. Then moving on to the stages. Now stages is whether this is you can consider this as a different environments or the different flow. So different environments is here I'm deploying and doing everything around dev test. Here I'm doing for the production. Okay. So now let us see how this works in practice. Now whatever I have shown you, I have already done the same thing here, exactly the same thing, dev test and prod. The variable names will different because the different while I do the different classes, I think this variable keeps on changing. So web app name and web app prod is what I have the variable names here. And while I do the deployments, that is exactly the same. Okay. And if you see the, I'm just passing on the variable, the web app name and the web app. Okay. So remember these, whatever you are trying to deploy, it matches with your deployments and you are able to make sure the variable names, whatever you have defined here, are being called exactly in your pipeline. Okay. So now let's try to run the CI pipeline. But before I do that, I think, as I said, I have to enable the trigger from CI pipeline. So I want to make sure that it is getting triggered automatically. This is the first stage, first thing which I have to do. Then second thing which I have to do here is check the approvals are in place. Yes. Then see the control gates is enabled. Yes. Final approval is here is also yes. So my complete continuous deployment is now ready to be triggered. Okay. So now let me first save this pipeline and run this from the CI. That means I'm not touching release at this point of time. I want to show you how the continuous deployment works while the CI gets complete. Okay. So I'm just going to the pipeline. I'm going to go to the CI eShop web, which is our build pipeline, and trying to run that pipeline. Okay. So while I run this, make sure you are running it against the proper branch or where your code is latest, so that while you deploy or do the dev test, you are following appropriate branching strategy. Okay. So according to the lab which we are doing, the CI should trigger the release pipeline. So that should work automatically. So we will just see how this is getting deployed at this point of time. Okay. So let's see step by step. So this will take around 5 minutes of time because we are running the build as well as the different test. Also, if you see, I have clearly added the unit test integration. Like by default, we had in CI, we only had a unit test. Now here I have also added the integration as a functional test because now as a part of release, we want to make sure it is not only the unit, but also our complete environment, right from an authentication, right from the deployments are going fine and we are able to access each and every API. Okay. So this is also our second lab, which I will just double click on it once we complete this release. Just don't want to block the flow so that we are aware of what exactly we are doing at this stage. Okay, so at this point of time, we are on functional test. Okay, so now we are creating our artifacts, file publishing our deployment pipeline, publishing for our deployment pipeline, which will be consumed. So while we publish this, basically we are actually trying to get a release out of the project, and that should be now be able to save it to an artifacts. From there, we will be able to download from our repository. Okay, so artifacts is where you are actually trying to upload. Okay, so we are done with the two artifacts upload, and there are 100% test pass. This is what we need before our release. Okay, team. So here we are with our deployment. Now, if you see, a CI pipeline has triggered the release pipeline. Okay, so it is now waiting for our approval before it can go on our further for the deployment and creating the environment. So what we will do here is we will approve here. Okay, so once we approve this and saying okay to go ahead, this will trigger the our release for the dev test. Now what it will consume is it will consume whatever the artifacts which we have seen for the deployment. That means it will consume the template. So I will show you how this looks like. Okay, so it is now initiating the, first of all, it will get obviously whatever it needs from a repository. Then it will pull down the download the templates, which are the ARM, okay, and give it a, it will create a resource group to the deployment. Okay, so exactly the same thing which I have shown you in the deployment. So let's see step by step. I think we should be able to get through each of them. So now it is deploying the ARM. Okay, while this is running, I think we should also check whether it is getting the resource group created. Now we have the release pipeline resource group created, and within that I think we should be getting, okay, so app service plan is there as of now. So once it tries to move further, I think it will try to create a website, dev test website. Okay, so let's wait for that to come. Okay, so this is what the name which we have given to our web app. Okay, so should be there before it updates. Yeah, app service is there, and it is trying to deploy the website. So while it does deploy, we will also check and enable the, which we can do manually here. So this is to just give you an info that right from here, like while you do the your deployment, I think we can enable the application insight from here directly. So this is a website which is getting created. What I want to do is I want to turn the application insight, okay, for this particular website. Now once I do that, I will see that this deployment is getting triggered. and then I should be able to create alerts from it. So we will wait for the application insights to get enabled. Once it finishes, I think we are going to go ahead and actually check out for the creation of alerts. So this is 60% complete. Okay, your app is connected to application inside resource now. Okay, so what we can do here is while you go to your, there will be even one more resource, which is application insight. Okay, also meanwhile checking that this is getting deployed successfully, we are now trying to deploy a web.zip to this particular, which will take some time, I think you already know. So what I will do here is, without wasting much time, I think we will go to the website itself, the application insight itself, and try to create an alert rule. Okay, so create alert rule. Okay, now here you have to select the, we want to check for failed request. Okay, and leave this as a default, you need not touch anything here. Okay, uh, check every 1 minute, when to evaluate, check every, I think make sure loop back period, I think this you can change if you want. I would keep it to, let me check first of all, this is, yeah, I think should be good, 5 minutes, 1 minute, check every 1 minute, let leave it, should be good for us. And while you go to actions here also, you can leave it actions, and coming to the details, make sure you give it some, first of all, severity which you are checking on is any particular warning, and this we are checking a failed website, you can say website failed to load, right? Failed website pages or something of that sort. Okay, so now in advanced option, make sure, while you can enable upon creation is again, auto resolve alerts will not give you a chance to see if this website comes up. Like practical scenario, you should keep it and resolve it manually, but I think it's purely depending upon how uh, the resilient your website is. If it is really good to recover from its own, I think you can create these alerts on automatically resolve, but if not, then you should turn this off so that you are able to actually see what's happening behind the scenes. Okay, again here I am saying check every 5 minute when to evaluate. Let's keep it this 5 minutes itself, or this will be look back period is also, let's 5 minutes. Okay, so this is an evaluation 5 minutes. I'm just checking it, and so that both are matching and we get sufficient time to really look into this. That is the only thing. I'm just changing them at runtime, just making sure we are good to go ahead with review and create. And finally, I'm creating this alert rule for our website. Okay, so if you go and check now, it is already queuing for alerts. At this point of time, it is not having any alerts. Okay, so that is the reason it's showing the, it succeeded. Okay, it did succeeded at this point of time. because we were not having any alerts. But if you see here, what I will do here is I will try to browse that website. So what I will do is going back to the web app. I'm just going back to the web app. And then within that web app, I'm just trying to browse this. This is the one thing. Another thing which we don't have is I don't have a specific pages for the discounts or something. You can give it anything. I'm just giving. So I don't have any page for discounts. So this should 101% fail, right? So I'm just giving the hit to the discount. I don't have this page. So this should create an alert in my Azure monitor. So we will check in a while. This page, I don't have anything as a discounts. I don't have any virtual directory which can be hit on the discounts. Okay. So this should run fine. This should load fine, but this should fail. Okay. So that is the main approach what we are trying to test at this point of time. Okay. So similarly, if you see in application insight, we should be getting alerts here at the here we should be able to get alerts here as it fails. So let's wait and watch for that. And we have already have the next in 3 minutes checking of that gate for Azure monitor. We have next in 3 minutes. So we should be able to fail. We should be able to pass here and we should be able to fail here because we don't have any discounts related directory in our website. Okay, so we have to be a bit patient and see what is going on with our from the logs. I think that it did finish fine, but I think we would know that this takes some time, and this is the website which we directly gone and browse from. So this should be coming up in a while. I will make sure hitting again it for this website. Let it wait for this to complete. So we are here at the post deployment gates. So again, going back to our release, I think we were pretty much clear what exactly it's going on, right? So we did our dev test. We followed our normal logs, and we are now at the deployment. After deployment, we are now at the gates for dev test monitoring. Okay, approvals we given. We had then done the ARM deployment, get the website run, and while this was running, we also gone and actually hit our application insight, enable application insight for our website, and then we are now checking the gate so that it should be able to check that if it is failing or it's passing. Okay, so this failed because we don't have anything here. Okay, so this failed, right? This particular should generate now alert for us. Now this is loading because our website is now ready. Okay, now we have to be checking this at an application insight level so that this is what we have. Okay, so this failed, this passed, and let's go to the application insight as a resource group. So this is a alert rule which we have created, right? But I can see this in whether I can see this in. So this will take some time to come here, but it will surely come. So just wait for it to come. Meanwhile, just check that this is again, unless and until we clear all alerts, it will not pass the test. That means the gate will not proceed for the deployments to the production. Okay. So that is what is required, so that if something fails or a website is not working at particular, you can say a virtual directory level, or even the page is not available, I think it should fail. So we have to give those tests in that particular. So I'm just trying to see if it is now getting the failed alerts here. Okay, so I see here now alerts getting generated for failures. Okay, I have 3 of them at this point of time. So let's go back to the while the matrix is there, I think I should be able to get the alert rules as well. Okay, so should be there. I think I'm able to see the warnings here, monitored for 1. So team, this takes some times for this to reflect, because this is what we are trying to pull it from the metrics of Azure Monitor. Okay, this is waiting for us to get this cleared. Okay, so it took some time to come, but I think this is what you will see actually. Okay, so this is an alert which you will see it, and it will be triggered in you. Okay, now what I want to do here is, as I'm already aware, or if you have already fixed it, you have to just close this for your gate to proceed. Okay, so you will click on change user response, and you will click on close, click on save. This will update it to the closed one, so it is not now waiting for you to track it back. So you can again refresh this alerts. Okay, so I'm just refreshing it and seeing that this is now closed. Okay, so it is now showing closed. Okay, now our, if there is an gate, that means in next 4 minutes now this should proceed without any issues. And meanwhile you can also check from your end that things are working fine, and then we are able to proceed with the gates. That means if I have to recall what we did as of now is, from the gate, that means at this stage this is what is running, and we are evaluating that our dev test environment was succeeding at each and every stage. Okay, and the gate is where it will re-evaluate that there are no failed alerts at this point of time in Azure Monitor, and we gone to the Azure Monitor alerts and really check those from our end. Okay, so while it was new, now it is showing close, that we have, it was now alert was fired, and we have now closed this. Okay, as we have closed this, now our gate should go ahead and close the loop and should be able to deploy to the production. Okay, so we have to wait for the, it is now in next 4 minutes. Okay, let me refresh. It is now in 3 minutes. So let's wait for it for 3 minutes, and if it succeeds, I think we should get an approval prompt for production deployment. So that is the reason, team, this time we are only going to do the 2 labs, because these labs are too exhaustive and it will take a lot of time for you to actually do it at your end. Hence, ensure you are paying attention to each and every step. Otherwise, this will be difficult for you to follow up as a workflow. So we are evaluating in 2 minutes now. Again, checking if there are no other alerts being fired at this point of time. So you can just go to the alerts and see the alerts are in closed state. Okay, should be in closed state. If they are new or in, it should be then waiting for the gate to succeed for the alerts to be closed before it proceeds. Either you resolve them or you can ignore those alerts. The change response for this should be mainly close so that the gate should succeed. Okay, so let's come back to our pipeline itself. So we are evaluating. Okay, 1 minute to go. Okay, so now we have cleared our gates. Now it is waiting for approval. So what we can do is we can go back and see our dev test is succeed. Our gate is showing tick mark. That means that is done. Now we are waiting for approval for pending. So go ahead for production. Okay, so the moment you do the approval, I think exactly the same thing which you have seen in dev test, we are trying to deploy them with the help of ARM template, and then we are going to do the deployment of the particular web app. Okay, so from is one is from infrastructure deployment getting through, and another is web app .zip getting deployed to that production. So this is what we have to go through in the production. So we will wait for this particular pipeline to complete before we move to the test pipeline. Again, this I think I have clearly distinguished between the different. One was your Az400 release, other is a release prod. So we should be able to see the different resource group now with the prod. Here it is. Okay, so it is still creating. First is an app service plan, then it will create the other things. Okay, so this is just a release pipeline, another was release prod for the production. So let's wait for this. Okay, once it succeeds from at least creating the services, we will move to our next lab, which is and come back and check this afterwards in interest of time. Okay, so let us see the services are getting created, and then we leave it here for this particular lab. Okay, services are getting created, and other the next thing will be done in the app service, and finally the deploying the web app on that the artifacts on that web app. Okay, so let's now move to our next lab, which is for our test strategy. Okay, so I think this will go fine. This will take some time to come up, but meanwhile at least we can move on to our other pipeline. So now other pipeline which I want to show you was the related to our functional test. Now first of all, see what we have as a part of our test. Okay, now consider your CI pipeline. So what I did was took the same pipeline as it is, or I can also show you in the labs. So let me close this off now and show you in the labs of setting up the functional. And so as a part of this lab, which is for setting up the different test, by default you have the unit test as a part of your CI pipeline that is already included. Okay, now as part of this lab you have to add these two. One is your integration test, another is your functional test. So once you're done, I think we should be able to get the output looking at what exactly the test it carried out. So let us look at this pipeline step by step so that you can then run this and go through the end-to-end lab. Okay, first is repository. I think this remains same. The build stages remain same. That means we are going through Ubuntu latest and trying to this is our agent. Then we trying to different task of actually having the build unit test. Now which I have added this new is this one. Okay, which I have just shown you, which is step by step guide of the labs itself, then functional test, and finally you publish your artifacts. This remains same. But as part of this pipeline, the important thing to note as is it will give you the link to check the actual results of the test. So let's run this and check what exactly the results you will get. Okay, so I'm just running this build and test pipeline, and just to give you the what exact the output results it creates, or I would say output reports it creates. I'm just closing out unused tabs. Okay, this is running. It may be taking some time to get the agent, but I think we should be good to go. Oh, I now remember. This is not running because this is still waiting for our previous release pipeline to get complete, because I only have one hosted. I think by default we get one only. So let us see whether our release pipeline is complete or not. It will wait till then. So it should be there soon. So once this finish, I think this is about to get, yeah, we are done with this. Now I think we can switch back to our, so our release is done. Let's move to the test. I think it should now pick up. Yeah, it has pick up now. So by default, I think if you are trying the free version of Azure DevOps, I think we are restricted only to one parallel pipeline. So that's enough for us for the testing purpose. That's the reason we are not wasting our production resources or even the license on that. Okay, these are all labs you can do without any buying anything, a license for Azure DevOps. Okay, so I think this is pretty much what we have seen as a part of build. The one thing which I want to show you, while each test passes, there will be a report created for that. So we have to clearly see those reports. Okay, so at least unit test is passed. If you see here, we have got the report. So what I will do is I will open a new tab so that you get a feel of what exactly we have as a part of unit test. Okay, so this is the kind of report you will get from your test run. And while you see, there is pretty much it is testing from outcome configuration, and if you see the test results, it will give you a complete step by step like what exactly the different tests it ran. Okay, so one is of basket, similarly basket surveys, catalog, then these all things it actually ran, okay, as a unit test. So you can check how many of them. 44 of them ran. Okay, so this is what the report you will see, and if it is anything is failing, I think you will get that as well, what duration it took and what exactly is the outcome. You can clearly check from the what which build it was tested, what was the, this is an attachment file which you can actually go and check. uh, this is the, you can open with the notepad. Okay, so I am not able to show you directly as a notepad at this point of time in interest of time, but I think you can go and check each and every test what exactly it targeted from an API per se. So each and everything you should be able to test as a part of this test run. Okay, now similarly the integration test as well. Yeah, also one more thing, while it runs here, I think here it does not gives you anything apart from this, but in the different some test, I think you will see the options purely what exactly the different test is running from a functional per se, like here functional test. Integration test will not give you anything, but functional test clearly lists down what exactly, what repositories it is hitting, or where it is exactly testing from an API per se. You get here in the logs itself. But integration test is more of internal to the actual testing. That is the reason you only get the report file. Again, here you can open the report file for integration test and see what different tests it ran. Okay, so it only from an outcome per se in this, and attachment is again there, you can open in the notepad and see here. Okay, so it was mainly related to the basket repository, order repository, and all. So this is the, when I say integration, this is more of a how actually the database is reacting to your front end layer, or I would say the middle layer, end to end, front end, middle layer. So integration is all about checking the handshake between the different layers of your application. Okay, so here we are just doing it as a dry run from the something running in memory, which are now entities are important basket, a repository which checks about the items are getting added. Similarly, is from an order per se, if orders are getting done and approved, and then finally prices. Similarly, each and everything whatever you do from an integration, you can add more of your test which you want to do the handshake between your front end, your middle layer, and finally the database layer. Okay, so these kind of the test reports you will get out of this pipeline. Now I will show you the functional test. Now if you see the functional test, it gives you more from the what exactly functionally. Now this is more how user will see this, right? That is the reason you got lot of details, what kind of action it is taking. And again, for this also I will get exactly the same report which you have seen for others, but here it is more descriptive in terms of where it is hitting, like say local host by default, then update, basket update, diagnostic. So this is purely a functional related things it is showing you what it is going from these particular test which is given out of box. So here again report I will show you. Okay, so these are the reports it ran on this particular, and these are the on web controllers, web pages. Uh, in short, what I want to say you is your each and every user functionality is being tested and done and dusted, that everything is really responding. Controller is responding to the request and passing on to the backend. Similarly, backend is responding back to the controller and passing on to the front end, so that all the web apps is able, you are able to have the website running fine without any issue. So this is what the test lab which you have to do and get it done. Okay, so today in today's session we did two things. One is on release strategy, we did the control deployments using release gate, and then we did the setup and functional test which I have just shown you. Okay, so that's all for today's session. Thanks for joining.